morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this month's Art of Persuasion. It's going to be a great program today. I want to, first of all, thank our sponsor for today, Marts and Lundy and Willard White. Thank you. And without any further ado, I want to move on to today's presentation. So I'm going to ask Willard White to please come forward, sponsor from Marts and Lundy. And those of you who don't know Willard, you are really missing something, because Willard is an expert, a veteran of our field. He is an educator. He is a veteran fundraiser. He's been with the University of Chicago. And so Willard is going to introduce our program today. And thank you so much for your sponsorship.
You're welcome for that, and I appreciate the introduction, of course. And I have a few things to say. Many of us were looking at the crisis in philanthropy, but since March 2010, the upswing, the trend in philanthropy has been so positive, we like to think it will continue forever. As the pool of dollars increases for philanthropy, some of you may have noticed that the number of 501c3 organizations competing for those dollars is going up much faster than the available pool of philanthropy. And that is something not to, to frighten us, but it does say something about the competition for dollars nationwide. It says something about the pressures that I see placed on frontline fundraisers at this time, in this decade particularly. What we are looking for are more skills, more tools in the toolbox in order to compete successfully, to stay ahead of the competition. It's as literal as that. And I believe that the practices and the wisdom and the models that come from the for-profit world are very much needed in our profession. Blair Singer is established as a leading feature, a force in leadership training, its personal and professional development, and salesmanship. We're also working in partnership with Blair. Kal Jurdi is here, and many of you have met both Blair and Willard already. And Willard is a trainer with Blair Singer. He's also a trainer with the Sandler organization. He is the founder of Fearless Transformation, his own proprietary program of leadership, training, team building, and personal professional development, which is offered to individuals and corporations and some government agencies. Many of you know that Willard and I together founded a charity called Walid's Fund that works with Syrian refugees in southern Lebanon. And in that organization, Willard is our director of operations. I imagine that at the end of today, all of you will go back to your list, your priority list of actions, and with your usual wisdom and grace, you will add to your day probably a few sharper tools in your fundraising toolbox, thanks to the Art of Persuasion. I welcome Blair and Willard.
So let me ask a question before we begin. How many of you in this room would like the remainder of 2018 to be one of your best fundraising years so far? Show of hands. Okay, good. How many would agree that last year at the minimum was interesting? Okay, good. So the reason I ask those two questions is because the goal for Kal and myself is to make sure that out of the very short time that we're together is to give you some tools, some techniques, some ideas that will be able to help, will allow you to generate a little bit more this time, and to attack and to be able to go after a market, as Willard was saying, a market of individuals who really are already looking for you. They just don't know it yet. How many people would like to find that market? Okay, good, thanks. That's what they do. But in this room, what I know without meeting you is that you have other motivation. And the motivation is to pay forward for a lot of people that don't have voices. So it's an honor for myself and for Kal to be with you guys and do whatever we can to make your trip, your journey, not only more lucrative for fundraising, but also more rewarding for you. Deal? So please give yourselves a round of applause for being here. Okay, bring up the other person who's going to, I want to introduce you as well, who's also going to be leading you through today. Kal, I met how many years ago? 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, somewhere around 4.
4 years ago. What you may or may not know, I mean, Willard gave him a great introduction. I will tell you this, person, great teacher. Give it up for Kal. Give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Blair. Thank you all for being here today. How many of you are already getting something out of this conversation this morning? Great. How many of you are looking forward to get some more? Great, thank you. So, as you probably heard Khaled, and you probably heard Kal, and you probably think like I'm 2 people. I'm one person. My name is Kal Jurdi, and I go by Kal for easier pronunciation. If you recognize, there's an accent there, so let me just get this out on the table. I'm originally from Lebanon, from Beirut, Lebanon. And anybody know where that is? Yeah? Okay. Yes? Give Blair a big hand, will you? Perfect. So now we're going to talk about, so the first step in the process I'm going to be sharing with you is bonding a rapport, which Blair just covered brilliantly. The step number 2 is what we call upfront contract. What's it called, please? Okay, so I'm going to put it under UFC, okay? Upfront contract. It resonates with me, at least. All right, so what does that mean, an upfront contract? How many of you, you said in some of the challenges you have that people do not, like they tell you they're going to show up to an appointment, or they don't show up, or they don't return your call, or they tell you to call me, but they don't answer the phone, they don't call you back. Fair? Or they tell you that I'm going to like to donate, but then they don't. Yeah? So many of those challenges you can get rid of in an upfront contract. Okay. How many of you noticed that I set an upfront contract this morning when we started, when I started my piece? How many of you noticed that? Yeah? What was the upfront contract? And you're young, and if you're not young, how would you be able to ask the question, how does that make you feel? Is that what I'm hearing?
Like kind of innocent, maybe let me make sure I get it. I mean, you have a very nice way to say that, and not everyone would have that. Yeah.
You know what? Thank you for the courage that you have for asking this question. Give her a big, big hand for that.
Okay, so Blair just said thank you to all of you. I say thank you to all of you. I want to thank Blair and Kal and your team for taking us as fundraisers to a new place. And if I could say, I've written down about 10 things that really impressed me about today, but I'll only say one. And that is, let me see. Actually, I'm going to say 2, all right? I think what you helped me see was all of the presumptions and assumptions, and I used that phrase before, that we take that we have in our jobs and we take into our meetings with our donors. You gave us permission to be bold, to be clear about asking what they want, and about, here's the really big part, stating what we want on behalf of our organizations. And that is a huge, huge step. And I'm excited to see what happens with all of us in that. The other thing, someone else at my table, or someone else said, you're helping us get out of our own way in raising money for the things we care about. So thank you, Kal. Thank you, Blair. I have a gift for you. So please give thanks. Please thank Blair and Kal and Willard for making today possible as he draws the winning ticket.
It's an enormous contribution from Blair and Kal. That's part of a gift to AFP and really to the profession. So we thank you both.
So if you could